just going to go ahead, just let you know that we are recording the webinar today. So for anyone who hasn't made it on, they'll be able to have a look at it as well. Thank you very much for attending. My name is Cormac McGreevy from BeyondHR. I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar, which will be delivered by my colleague, Natalie O'Hare. Today, Natalie is going to be taking you through the quite timely and interesting topic of managing difficult conversations in the workplace. Something I'm sure you've all had to do at one stage or another, or maybe you're about to have to do. We've quite a few returning attendees on today. So first of all, thank you very much for coming back. And for all those that are new to our webinars, thank you very much for attending as well. For your benefit, we are BeyondHR. We're a HR consultancy firm that helps organizations to recruit, manage, and safeguard their staff. We work with a range of SMEs and corporates across Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales, providing outsourced HR solutions to help business owners sleep at night. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Natalie, who will take you through today's seminar. Thank you.
Thanks, Cormac, for the great introduction. Unfortunately, my camera is not working. If I start the video, it's just a blank screen. If I do a rear camera, you can see a lovely view of the floor. So on that note, you will just have a picture of myself, and apologies. Sometimes the cameras do affect the presentation anyway, so maybe that's fate and that's the way it goes. But that's what I look like if anybody hasn't met me yet. And thanks, Cormac, like you said. Thanks everyone for being here today. Hopefully you've got a lovely coffee for this time in the afternoon. And today we are going to be looking at dealing with difficult conversations. Q&A at the top, so or at the bottom, depending on your screen. Get any questions throughout the session. The questions will be anonymous so that only myself can see those. So if you want to post those, or if it is something that is super sensitive and you would rather pick up on a one-to-one basis, then please feel free to give us a call after the session and we can happily talk through and give you some further tips and guidance. The session has been recorded, so if you are talking about employee, just maybe say about employee A, etc. But as I said, it will only be myself that is reading out the questions anyway, and we'll hopefully have 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the presentation today. Now, today's topic we could probably talk about for about 3 hours, but we have kind of half an hour presentation and 10 to 15 minutes of questions at the end. Great topic. Many queries that we deal with on a day-to-day, even an hourly basis sometimes, with dealing with those conversations. And many managers or business owners know what they want to say, they just don't know the best way of saying it, or they're quite worried about what to say, and actually are they allowed to get away, or are they allowed to say some of the things that they want to say? So hopefully today we'll be able to give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour and give you an insight and 12 top tips into dealing with difficult conversations. So let's fire away. So today's agenda, what we are looking at is the statistics, really brings the context to life and the topic. The tricky 10, our top tips for dealing with difficult conversations, and some examples that we would like to share with you as well. So the statistics, quite interestingly, we find it harder to ask our boss for a pay rise than to dump a partner. More than 80% of us have never had any training in how to tackle difficult conversations at work, a statistic that is alarming. But with the high numbers of people on this session today, I am not surprised, because you're craving some training. You need to know what you don't know already, or you may have a pending issue that you need to deal with and are not sleeping well at night because of it. And more than 80% of workers are running in fear from at least one scary conversation at work, a conversation they know they need to have, but they are dreading. So on that note, it's just good for us to find out And again, there'll be no names that appear, etc. It will only be percentages shared, but you should have some polls, an opportunity to answer. Yep, everyone's coming through. So how many of you are currently holding off a conversation you should be having now? Great, they're just all coming in. It's a good bit of interaction because it's a webinar. I can't see all you lovely people, so it's good to see in terms of the thoughts. Great. So what we are looking at is 42% of people at the moment are currently holding off a conversation, and that might be the reason that you've jumped on today, which is super, and 58% is no. Obviously in a couple of weeks' time, it might be good to see that figure again, but obviously there's some kinds of conversation that people are having that they need to think about and get some tips on that is imminent. So that's great to know. Super. So the 3 hardest conversations in the UK, the top 3 at the moment that we do face in the workplace is pay at 33%, colleagues' inappropriate behaviour at 31%, and feedback on poor performance, which is 30%. Now, we've talked about the top 3 there, but this is the tricky 10. So this is the most difficult conversations, and the statistics show that the most difficult conversations actually occur in the workplace, whether that's the conversation is taking place or whether people are getting advice. For example, number 4, promotions, 23%, number 5, sex, 19%. That is the subject of conversation in the workplace as well, whether it's maybe people getting advice, etc. Who knows? Relationship breakups, family relationships, money, health, and letting someone go from a job features at 10% as well. So these are all the conversations, the difficult ones that are occurring in workplaces at the moment, with pay still featuring as 33% in the number 1 slot, and inappropriate behaviour and feedback on poor performance. We'll talk you through lots of tips and where it might go wrong and what to do if you just keep thinking about it and not doing it. But with more than half of workers saying they deal with a difficult conversation at least once a month, why are workplace conversations so hard to deal with? No support and no training is what keeps coming back time after time, which is very unfortunate, but does coincide with the 80% figure of managers and individuals in the workplace not having that training on how to deliver feedback in the best way. So a bit sad, a bit of a devastation in terms of statistics, but I guess we need to help support, and we do have quite a large number of calls on the very subject. So it's clear to see why people are on the session today, as we've said, and hopefully you'll feel a lot better when you come off today with some of the tips. We'll share at the end as well how to get a handle on the slides. So don't worry about taking notes. And as I said, just keep the questions coming through in the question and answer section, and we'll take it from there. So our tips for dealing with difficult conversations. We have only 12 today. We could have many more, but we obviously don't have all of the time. So our top number 1 is understand your fears. A lot of the reason that people do not have the conversations is just purely for their own fear, to be honest. It's the fear of, this is not a nice conversation. What happens if it goes wrong? What happens if it's not received well from the employee or the other individual, if it's even out of work? What happens if the feedback doesn't land well? What happens if I make them cry? What happens if I demotivate them? And now we can't say that all of these things won't happen because we can't control the other sides. But what we can do is understand your own fears and understand that it's all just completely normal. But as soon as we can understand our own fears, why we're not having the conversation, then hopefully that's a step forward, and then we can maybe reassure in terms of getting you prepared for, yes, your fear is that they might not take the feedback well. yeah, they might not actually take the feedback well, and what path do we go down next for the conversation, etc. as well, and then how do we take the conversation if the person maybe becomes defensive, etc. So it's really good to maybe understand your own fears at this time and understand what your worries are and why you're putting off having these conversations. So that would be our top tip number 1. Our top tip number 2 would be adopting the right approach. Now, there is good ways, there is better ways. There is no perfect way to deliver feedback, but think about everything from the room to who's about. Are you having it in a local Costa coffee, but maybe it's really quiet and that's okay and that's where the person feels comfortable? But are you doing it somewhere that's not private? Are you doing it over Zoom when it needs to be on face-to-face really for this particular item that you want to address with the individual? Do you have anybody else in the room with you? And is there a need to have anybody else in the room with you? If there's a formal process, absolutely, we must follow the guidelines. But if there's no formal process and there's 3 people, 1 taking notes and 1 is backup, then it does sometimes look more of interrogation. So make sure mainly one-on-one feedback and thinking of that right approach. There are often stories where particularly some of our clients or people that we've dealt with in the past, the approach hasn't been right. They've been that up to high dough. They've got themselves really prepared for the conversation and they just lose it. The person walks through the door and they have been prepped for so long, but they actually just lose it because they're that nervous. They want to quickly get the feedback out. So it almost appears like a firing gun, which was never the intention. But it just appears that it's a firing gun and it's definitely not the right approach. So properly think about it from the timing of the day to, is it the best day? We will talk about timings, etc. later for giving feedback. But if you're in a really foul mood because it's been a hard morning trying to get the kids out and one of them needed their nappy changed before you left and you were late and you're in a foul mood, or you've had a bit of road rage in the morning, really is that the best time to sit down then and have that conversation. So always be thinking about adopting the right approach and the right style for you as well. Tip 3, which is fairly difficult, would be to challenge your own assumptions and beliefs. Because someone is 5 minutes late, our natural reaction for a manager might be they're lazy, they can't get out of their bed in the morning, they don't want to be here, they don't love the job as much as we do. But challenge your own assumptions and be careful not to make those assumptions, which is human nature, and we need to train ourselves to think the other way, but really think about those assumptions and those beliefs and give someone the benefit of the doubt and actually get them to tell you, which is another one of our tips. But don't think about the assumptions. But it's 3:30 in the day, 3:45. The amount of assumptions that everybody has probably made right now in the day already, you've probably, with kind of stats, would be about 10 assumptions that you've already made at the moment, from his cup of tea's rotten, he can't make a lot of tea at home. Maybe that is his cup of tea that he has at home, and you've just assumed that he's rubbish at home and he doesn't ever make tea at home, for example. The person has come in 5 minutes late to work and you've assumed that they're lazy. Someone maybe hasn't eaten in the workplace today and you've assumed that they're on a diet, but maybe they've just not had time to eat because they've been so busy. So there are so many assumptions, and during one of these feedback sessions, we need to be careful, and it's quite good to be able to analyse how many assumptions that you have made, where we just need to be really, really careful. So remove the assumptions, remove your beliefs, and strip it right back. Our top tip number 4 is practice, practice, practice. Practice in front of the mirror, practice with a friend, practice with a family member, practice on Zoom, call and get advice and practice then and get some role play going or some further training, or just bounce the idea in terms of, I know what I need to say, but I don't know the best way to say it. That is mainly the situation and the most common when we do have queries. I know what I want to say, this is what I think, how do we actually say it? So practicing that, and obviously it doesn't have to be perfect when you go in, only you know the script in your head, but have a good old practice. Don't wing it, it might go wrong. Make sure that you feel confident and that you feel that you're happy with the piece of bad news, whatever they may be, or that bad piece of feedback that you are delivering as well. Lots of different feedback models to use as well. And think about what one is best for you, and quite a balanced approach as well. So it's not what you really want is the person coming out thinking, let me show them, I will take this feedback on board, I'll absolutely nail it, and I will show them I can do this. It's more of a motivational tool. Your intent is to make the person successful and to have more success and to thrive, rather than to beat over the head with a big stick. So practice, practice, practice before you jump into that. Listen to their sides, give them an opportunity. The sessions that we've seen, or the feedback that we've had, would be where the manager goes in, they say their piece and they don't let the other person speak, or they let the other person speak, but they maybe don't empathise or try and understand from their point of view. So you're removing your assumptions and your beliefs that we spoke about earlier, and we are giving them an opportunity. Really, the conversation should almost be 50-50 in terms of you maybe pointing out some areas, but the individual giving their side back in terms of maybe some reasonings behind, or some things that are happening, or from their point of view, what is happening as well. Okay, so listen to their side and give them an opportunity. There may be a few things that are a surprise to you as well, so really give an opportunity. And prepare real evidence and examples. Don't be woolly, be very specific. Don't bring examples in from 6 months ago that's burnt up inside you and then annoyed you and then you've just blown. So think about real evidence and real examples that you have in terms of any maybe poor performance that you've witnessed, or what that has to be, and deal with it when you can, as soon as you can. Because what normally happens is it builds up, and maybe in the 4th or 5th occasion, a manager might bring it to an individual's attention, and that's a failure. Nothing should be a surprise. If, for example, someone is having an unsuccessful probationary period, throughout the whole 3 or 6 month process, there's been regular feedback so that the person does not walk away with any surprises. If the person, and surprise and disappointed is 2 different things. If it's disappointment, that's okay. If it's surprise, then we've failed. We have failed, because nothing should be a surprise from that point of view. So prepare that real evidence, take time. That's all in the preparation before the meeting. You really have one shot at this, remember. It might not land well, but if you're able to back up with evidence and examples, the employer individual might really respect that. They might not agree, but they can show that actually how things are being perceived on the other side as well. So thinking about your evidence and all your examples. And handle reactions with care. Many individuals, this might be their first time that they've heard what you've got to say. They might really think they're doing a good job. They might be surprised. They might be emotional. Are you prepared for tears? Are you prepared for anger? Are you prepared for frustration? Are you prepared for blame? There are many emotions and reactions that will take place in this meeting. Very little will it just be a nod of the head and completely understanding, okay, boss. So we do need to be mindful and be able to handle those reactions with care. And if people have other things going on, which is quite a big theme at the moment, this might be the last thing that they need. But obviously you have to give that feedback, but maybe some of the reaction you might have might be linked to other items going on in their life, and how are you going to help and support that as well. And tip number 8, and as I said, remember you can get a copy of the slides, so if you're quickly writing all of these down, don't worry, we'll get the slides over to you as well, is remaining neutral and factual. So yes, you're pointing out some bad things, but you're also pointing out some good things, and you're just being very, very factual in your feedback and in your delivery, so that there's kind of no debate. It's not really about opinions, etc., but it's more about facts and some neutral evidence that you have that you are bringing to light as well. So remain neutral and factual. Our top tip number 9 would be to have policies in place. I laugh at this one. I don't laugh on purpose. I laugh where managers point out about maybe not following a certain procedure or a certain policy, and the individual turns around and says, where is that policy? Or can I have eyes on that policy? Or it's not been updated for 5 years. So the whole credibility of the process is gone. But also, if someone is not happy in the way that maybe the feedback has been delivered, do you have a policy that talks about how they would escalate that, or where they would go, or who they could speak to? So think about having policies in place. And in general, we obviously do many webinars on various other topics, but have a look at your documentation. When has it last been reviewed? Is it up to date? Are you happy with it? Does it reflect the business? All of these things that I want you to think about when you are looking at your policies as well, but making sure that you have everything in place that you need to, and anything can be escalated if someone is maybe not happy in terms of the feedback that has been delivered, or the way it's been delivered, or if someone else was present and they're not happy, etc. as well. So have those policies in place. And tip number 10 is, what's the plan? It's great having the conversation. You've had a sleepless night about it. You've done the conversation. But what I ask is, what's next? What happens from this meeting? Is there a plan? Is there action points? Is there support that you're going to give? Is there timescales? How are they going to get there, and how are you going to help them get there as well? And where is the plan? Who has a copy? Where will it be? And when again will we sit down and look at it? That was many questions I fired at you there, but what is the plan? You've delivered the feedback. You probably think, Hugh, that's it, over. Great, but what is the plan? So having that there, and that follows on to the next tip of, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So having that plan, whether it's an email, whether it's a formal correspondence that's sent out in a letter with a plan attached, depending on what stages you're doing any of this feedback at. But from a tribunal's perspective, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. And in terms of the risk, where this comes in, at the moment, if an employee has under 1 or 2 years service, depending on where you are in Scotland, England or Wales, in Northern Ireland, if the employee does not have the required length of service to go to a tribunal, they may seek advice and use other means. So what we do see a lot of calls and a lot of cases on would be maybe where example of a business that needs to dismiss someone through an unsuccessful probationary period, and there's not a stitch of paperwork in sight. There's no communication, there's no emails, there's no meeting minutes, there's nothing that's about performance. In the manager's head, the person has to go. But in terms of an audit trail, there is nothing written down. And there would be other avenues, and certainly an employee may go down other avenues from a tribunal in terms of maybe protected characteristics, so age, sex, race, religion, for example. So they may say, they're the youngest employee and that's the reason why you dismissed. They were the only female employee and that's why you dismissed. How are you going to defend that that is not the reason and it was performance if you don't have anything written down? So we need to be careful. In many areas of HR and employment law, it's all about, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. If you have minutes, etc., great. If it's not that type of conversation, you've just got some bullet points. If you've got an action plan, if things are still not happening after feedback, what have you done? Where is the follow-up? So in terms of that tip 11, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. Thanks so much for the questions coming through so far. If you just keep those going for anybody that's joined as well, just in the question and answer section, it will only be myself that sees them until they are answered. And if you don't name anybody, then that would be great. It's just about an employee, etc. as well. Okay, and we'll get those at the end. Tip 11. The best sign of a good manager is their ability to have difficult conversations, 100%. So these conversations are happening near enough every day. It's really sad that the statistic of 80% of people have still had no training on it right enough. But I guess that's why people are on sessions and trying to do a bit of training themselves. But we need to think about the best sign of a good manager is that ability to have difficult conversations. Difficult conversations happen every day in life, and absolutely they happen every day in the workplace. a good manager just gets on with it. They're well prepared. They've done it often. They know what to do and the right things to say. And if they don't, they've sought advice on what to do and what to say in the best way. And they're always thinking about giving that feedback and making it a success and turning the person around from maybe falling short to being very successful at what they do. So the best sign of a good manager is their ability to have those difficult conversations. And I absolutely stand by that tip. And another item where we've shared, we've done this session this morning as well and got some really good feedback, is know your team. How do you know how they're going to take feedback? How do you know what makes them tick? How do you know what they're like as a person? Will they be defensive? And wouldn't it be really good to have those conversations and make it land in the best way? So I would do this for yourself as well. www.16personalities.com. And this will give an insight. There are 16 different personalities. Depending on the size of your business, you might have all 16 of these in your company and maybe all 16 in your team as well. But an example personality here, so that all these traits are linked to the same type of person. So they are worried about their social status, they're inflexible, they're reluctant to innovate or improvise, they're vulnerable to criticism, they're often too needy, and they're too selfless as well. So the question is, how would you deliver the feedback here? Okay, so we need to be sensitive to some of these items. So they are worried about their social status. So they do limit their creativity and their open-mindedness. So you maybe need to point out some things where they're not very open-minded. They're inflexible. You need them to change. How are you going to do that? They're reluctant to innovate or improvise, so they're unwilling to step out their comfort zones as well, so they might not even take well the feedback that you're giving them. So have a think about, when you get the slides over, how would you deliver this feedback? But this is only one of the different types of personalities that you might have in the business. So think about all of those different personalities and have a think about the way that you would deliver. And it would be really good for you to know. It's similar to, we always talk about, know what makes people tick. If you're sitting doing an appraisal with someone that is not money driven at all, and all you're talking about and all you're linking targets and items to is money, the person's not listening. They're not there. They're not even in the room sometimes, because you're not making them tick. So what you need to think about is, what is everybody in my team? And actually you might have to adapt your feedback differently in order to get the best out of people as well. It's a completely free tool as well, you'll be happy to know. So have a wee look. Just for the website again, it was www.16personalities.com, and do it for yourself. It will talk about what you're like in the workplace. It will talk about what you're like as a friend, as a lover, and your strengths and weaknesses. The more you know about your team, the more that you're able to have those discussions and conversations as well. So that would just be your final tip. So a very whistle-stop tour of all of the different discussions. There has been many tribunal cases that have shown the employer in a bad light, where they've not delivered feedback in the right way. They've maybe not listened to some sympathetic items, maybe during a performance process, and they've just went all guns blazing ahead and maybe dismissed, etc. So absolutely lots of cases that we could, if we had more time, discuss today, thinking about how you're going to deliver that feedback and how you're going to get the best. So we'll deal with questions in a wee moment. We deliver these sessions in-house to companies, to managers. We were asked this morning about, do we deliver it to employees as well, to make sure that they get the best out of receiving feedback? Absolutely. We do many webinars as well, most of which you hopefully get into your inbox to see what those sessions are. And if anybody does have any questions that you've not posed today that you would prefer to speak to us one-to-one on, then that would be super. But thanks for your attention today. We'll go through some questions and we'll take we'll take some questions from here. So how can we manage our own emotions in between the difficult conversations, especially when the process takes some time and the employee is still working? Absolutely. I guess we're talking about kind of performance related queries here. Emotions will be high. You might get impatient. You might be emotionally involved with the person as well. Quite often, particularly in small businesses, you maybe know their family, you know their children's names, you have a good relationship with them. You might even have a relationship outside of work in terms of going for a drink with them at night time or going to the gym, etc. with them. So it's very, very important that we do manage our own emotions. And it's very important that we get maybe feedback on those sessions as well, in terms of if we were too emotional, but we're sticking to the facts. Remember, feedback, and it's always very cheesy. It always sounds very cheesy when we say, but feedback is a gift, and it is a gift. It's good to tell someone and point out, but it obviously has to be given with permission. We're looking at the intent for growth. We're looking, it's about for the person, not about the person, and it's targeted for success. So gift, GIFT, for feedback's a gift. So we're thinking about those. If you have a look at some of the feedback models or get in touch on some of the feedback models, that might help you manage emotions as well. But we're only human. We may have emotions. If you keep it together in the room and then you come out and have a sigh or a cry or a scream, that's okay. But if we can try and manage our emotions during those meetings, absolutely, the process might take some time, as you've correctly pointed out as well here, and the employee might still be working, coming in day to day, and that's just how we have to deal with it, unfortunately. And if an employee was dismissed as well, and maybe they were dismissed for performance, and their performance has gone downhill again, absolutely. So people might get back up to speed, come back down again, get back up to speed, come down again. So what's the plan in place? What are the controls? Have a look at support that we've given them. How do we then manage in terms of their performance? Quite a difficult one when it fluctuates or we have peaks and troughs of performance. Finding out what else is happening, get their insight into things. And performance is quite a lengthy process to go through. So particularly seek advice at that particular time as well. But absolutely, there might be peaks and troughs. You might have good performance for 6 months, for example, and you think, yes, we're getting there, and then the individual falls back down again. Okay, so just being careful about that as well. Another question in terms of feedback and timeframes. We always say give feedback immediately. Immediately sometimes, I would say, with caution. Quite often we might say to someone, go home, sleep on it, come back, let's have a clearer view tomorrow, because they are, again, with the emotions, far too involved, far too emotionally involved. The conversation would not land well if they are so heightened with emotion. So having maybe a sleep on it, getting some advice the next day, but really we should be dealing with feedback as it happens. So maybe not right that day, the next day, a few days after, but the worst thing is pointing out someone mistakes that they've maybe made 3 or 4 months ago. So we need to be very, very mindful of that. What do we do where someone we're going through performance, we're dealing with difficult conversations, we're giving the feedback, but the employee has personal issues and stuff going on at home? Absolutely, and I think we're feeling that quite a lot at the moment, between coming through the pandemic, mental health on the rise. Certainly there are far more grievances at the moment being raised in workplaces as well. So we need to be careful. It is good in a way when an employee does confide in you, because they have that relationship and they can tell you exactly what's going on, so that you can understand maybe why their performance is dipped. And it's not always down to you to be able to fix it, but you might be able to, legally, you'll have to be able to point them in the direction, maybe for support as well. So it's been mindful of those personal issues that are getting in the way, helping the employee get those sorted or close to sorted to then come back on track to deal with the performance and those conversations as well. We need to be careful because we can't obviously put off having those conversations, but we maybe just need to look at timeframes and when is the best time, and are they now getting support, rather than giving too much at the one time if they've got stuff going on at home as well. However, there are business needs and they might be in such a critical role and the business might be suffering because of it as well. So it's a fine balance, each case on its own merit, and please just call for further advice as well. When performance managing a member of staff and they bring up mental health issues, how much leeway do they get, and where does it stop as well? Absolutely, it's an important one. It's a difficult one at times as well. We may need to get some expert help as well. We're not GPs, we're not medical professions. Mental health can range from, on a fit note, from someone just having low moods to someone not getting out of bed or having suicidal thoughts. So it's important. Mental health is classified, but it's important to actually find out the seriousness, the severity, the symptoms. Is there also anything triggering in work which is contributing to mental health? We would have to be careful about that as well. So it's understanding, first of all, what is the mental health issues? How can we help support? What is the severity? Is it something maybe that they've experienced in the past as well? Is it potentially a disability that we need to be careful for uncapped claims at a tribunal as well? So if this is going on in your business at the moment, please just give us a shout. And I think we've got time for one final question. There are many more, and sorry, just please give us a wee call and we'll be able to talk through if an employee discloses domestic abuse, maybe at home with a partner. Absolutely a very difficult one that absolutely could be affecting performance. So great that they have been able to confide in you. So what help and support are we able to get them as well, and maybe quick help and support as well. Remember, we're not expected to be qualified to be able to deal with some of these things, so maybe looking at local charities in the area or local groups in the area that you can maybe push them on to get that proper help as well. Being sympathetic to the issue, what's happening. They might confide in you, they might not in any more detail. Absolutely. Okay, that is great. There are some more questions. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but thanks for today. If you want to get a copy of the slides, if you can get in touch on the email address, inquiries@wegobeyondhr.com. And just in terms of the stats, quite sad stats, but we are where we are, I guess. And just quickly to go through all of the tips again, I would have been better having one slide with them all on. So understanding your fears, adopting the right approach, challenging your own assumptions and beliefs, practice, 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 listen to their side and give them an opportunity, prepare real evidence and examples, handle reactions with care, remain neutral and factual, have policies in place. What's the plan? If it's not written down, it didn't happen. And the best sign of a good manager is their ability to have those difficult conversations. So if you have that conversation, is it 48% of you, I can't remember from the poll, sorry, that's ready to have a conversation that needs some help, please don't hesitate to give us a call. Go away, do this yourself. It takes 10 minutes, I think, not even as much as 10 minutes, and get your team doing it as well so that you can understand them a bit more, so that the feedback that you give them lands the best way possible. So thanks everyone for today and all of the questions. Our contact numbers are there and we can assist and support, or if any of your team needs further training as well, your management team or senior leaders or employees, then absolutely just give us a shout. Sorry, I'm not able to come on camera and wave to say bye. As you can see, it's just a blank screen. But thank you very much today for coming on, taking time out your diary at this time in the afternoon as well. And hopefully I will speak to you all later. And thanks, Cormac, for all the technical and the nice introduction as well. Take care, everyone.